Deshaun Watson's case just got murkier. We have the latest here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, along with the results of a recent auction draft that we did that happens to be a Superflex with 4 flex spots. Crazy stuff. My guest is Luke Hoover from RotoWire. We're happy to be doing this. We'll be right back to you after this. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with Luke Hoover. We've got a lot to talk about today. No small business other than, let me rephrase it. No bigger news than I talk professionally for a living, folks. No bigger news than Deshaun Watson getting this case getting murkier and murkier. The NFL announced that it will indeed appeal the independent appointed judge. A judge's recommended 6-game suspension is going to ask for more. Going to ask for indefinite, at least a year. Wants money. Wants him to get treatment. And meanwhile, Watson's camp is saying they did nothing wrong and they want nothing. So this is going to come to a head. It looks like they're threatening a lawsuit. This is exactly what they were saying before the suspension got handed down on Monday, Luke.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it's going to play out, I think, pretty straightforward from what the CBA says, everything I'm hearing, at least. This is all Goodell's call, and sounds like they want to give him this indefinite suspension or at least bump this up. So I'd be surprised if he plays this year at this stage.
Yeah, and I actually thought that he would after Monday. Outlet tea leaves, the Players Association sending that tweet out Sunday night saying, we're not going to appeal the ruling. We encourage the league not to also, like they knew what was coming down. Hey, turns out the league had 3 days to decide, and they took 2 and decided they will appeal it. Now, going through this process, I'm not quite sure how it works. I think Roger Goodell, or his designee gets to review it and then issue that final decision. But then, Watson, the NFLPA, would have to file suit in federal court. The Players Association was kind of, gunning for having the system not be Goodell being the judge, jury, and executioner. And that's the thing they're hoping, having the process of, an actual evidentiary process with a former judge is trying to avoid that a little bit, but it looks like that is going to go around that route anyhow.
Yeah. As long as they can't correct that in the CBA, Goodell's got too much power to probably some people, but I think, at the end of the day, it might be, I think there will be people that will probably be happy with what the decision comes to be.
I bet. So interestingly enough, are you like me, a former attorney, current attorney, any sort of legal background? Did I get that right? Or you?
I mean, I did study business law in college, but no attorney background. Almost.
You did watch once Matlock on TV, and so therefore you're qualified.
No. Law and Order, right? No, yes. A buddy talked to me out of law school, actually.
Yeah. And from Monday, in the last 3 days, Watson's ADP on the NFFC is still pretty low. It's 134. That's in 9 drafts, 110 to 158. So no one was really kind of going crazy to go get Deshaun Watson for this year, because even had there been no appeal, even then he still would have been missing 6 games. So that, I guess, is enough to dissuade some people from going and spending too much on Watson in the in the draft capital or in an auction. In our auction on Monday night, however, he went. It's a Superflex league, and he only went for $4 for RotoWire's Peter Shankey. So Pete may have to throw that back, but Pete also has at least 3 quarterbacks. I remember seeing that in the draft. So don't cry for Peter Shankey. He's a happy man anyhow. He's got Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. So
I think he'll be all right.
Yeah,
he was trying to set up a trade. It seems like possibly with that little luxury ad.
Exactly, or at least have the ultimate bye-week quarterback. But and he still might. Here's the thing is. So say Watson files suit. That kind of just throws the brakes on the process a little bit there, and he he might be eligible to play.
Yeah, that I can't speak to. If you've got the legal background, then maybe you can enlighten us a little bit.
I don't have it anymore. I'm a recovering attorney, not an actual attorney.
All right. Well, if that does end up happening, then yeah, I mean that's a steal at I think the $4 he spent on him, and I was tempted. I almost ticked that up a bit, but you're just too much uncertainty.
I'm going to have to go ping my guy, Drew Davenport. He is like my go-to for legal issues in the NFL. And he's been a busy man lately. You should follow him on Twitter. And we've had him on the podcast last year. I'll have him again at some other point in time. We're a week into training camp. We got a lot going on, lots of news left and right. One major injury, that's Tim Patrick, tore his ACL. He's out for the season, unfortunately. That's a big blow for Denver. He's a guy that got drafted in our league and, gets drafted everywhere. He's in my top 150, at least my previous one. I'm about to, update it later tonight. So we'll see what happens what I'm going to do with like KJ Hamler. But, this hurts Denver for sure.
Oh, 100%. He's a really good red zone option for Wilson and a bit of a surprising deep threat, because he's built a little bit more like that, possession target. Move the chains over the middle type of player, but he's quietly been their best receiver the last 2 years. They'll be okay. It's still Russ Wilson. He's got Cortland Sutton. He's got Judy. Hamler coming off the injury adds that deep threat. But yeah, it could be tough on them at least initially. Yeah,
I think so too. What are you looking for right now? And when you read training camp news, we got the Hall of Fame games tomorrow night, first preseason game of the year. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of noise out there, but there's also some signal here and there. What do you find moves the needle for Luke Hoover?
Mostly, with the caveat, we're real early. It's a week into training camp, roughly, 10 days maybe for a lot of these teams. I'll pay attention a little bit more to maybe some news out of like the padded practices. A lot of that stuff that's the 7-on-7, even the 11-on-11, they're not hitting. Mm-hmm. I'm not putting too much stock into that, but I won't. I'm not. I can still be the victim of a few highlight reel catches and things like that, and I guess we'll get to that when we talk about our draft and how I overpaid a little bit for Brandon Ayuk. But I'm starting to buy into hype for a handful of receivers, probably about 5 to 7 or so. That reports out of their camps are the connections they're developing with quarterbacks. Some of the highlight plays that they're making. I'm probably going to be the biggest George Pickens fan by the end of the preseason. I was a huge fan of his going into the draft and felt like he was a surefire first round talent. And I think he's displaying a lot of that ability so far in Steelers camp, as far as everything that I could see, especially with Deontay Johnson holding in, and not out there and playing. He's getting a lot of opportunity. It wouldn't shock me if he surpasses Claypool and, assuming Johnson lines up, that those two are, vying for targets every week. And he's kind of maybe even a 1B on that roster. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Other guys I really like, Elijah Moore, certainly getting quite a bit of hype. I've not been a fan for years, but I'm starting to come around again on Juju and what he might be for that Kansas City offense. And maybe it really was. I believe that he fell off because he was, a true number 2 receiver, couldn't handle being the number 1 with no Antonio Brown there, and couldn't separate from coverage as well as he needed to. But then maybe it was really more Ben, and the deterioration of his arm. So I'm interested to see what he can do there. And some other young guys, 2 other rookies, obviously, as a Packers fan, I'm paying very close attention to them. And it sounds like Romeo Doubs is making a highlight reel catch pretty much every practice. Yeah. Rodgers making that quote today, raises eyebrows, puts him on the radar. And a guy, I think he should probably be drafted in most leagues. I don't think he was in our draft. I have to double check, but I think he's going to be on a lot of rosters come September. And Treylon Burks, after, some disappointing news with OTAs and mini camp starting to prove it out there. He just came back in shape and is the physical specimen that that tore up the SEC, and he's starting to beat up on cornerbacks and make contested catches and things like that. And so when you see some of those highlights, those are really catching my attention.
He's probably starting to rise after sinking a little bit after OTAs and mini camps, as you alluded to, with the asthma and conditioning issues. That passed pretty quickly, so that was good there. I want to circle back to Pittsburgh real quick. You mentioned George Pickens, and yeah, he is turning heads. Pittsburgh's got a great track record drafting wide receivers on day 2 of the draft, and Pickens is no exception to that. The funny thing is, he's turning heads in a positive way, despite 2 of the 3 quarterbacks having awful training camps. Mitch Trubisky, hilariously, was like 0 for 16 on a drill there on every pass beyond 2 yards in a passing drill they were doing, I think, in the red zone just yesterday. That's pretty wild. And then on the flip side is, Kenny Pickett is also looking terrible so far, working with the third team. Those tiny little hands. It looks like that's might be. He's now not near starting. Everyone, I think they wanted to have Trubisky be your starter there for week 1 and maybe the first few weeks of the season, if not the whole season. Right now, the best quarterback in camp is Mason Rudolph, and we've seen that movie. It's nothing special.
No, but they have the weapons. They have playmakers. I think they can elevate versus a lot of those, elite level talents of Russ Wilson and Rodgers, who might elevate receivers, Brady, of course. And I think maybe it'll be the reverse for the Steelers, and some of the skill talent around them might elevate them. But it might come down to that offensive line, which, still probably hasn't anywhere close to fixed. And I wonder how much of the struggles they're having in camp is going against a potentially elite defense, a great front seven, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. From what I've, noticed out of the camp, reports are that Miles Jack has been a really good addition, and Devin Bush is starting to play up to his first round, pedigree after a little bit of, some injury issues early in his career. And, that front seven might end up being one of the best in the league.
I think that's a great point, by the way.
Yeah. And we had that Superflex draft that we did in Vegas, where I did add Trubisky as a guy I thought I might be able to play in as my number 2, planning to pretty much stream my second receiver opposite, or a second quarterback opposite Russ. And that's not looking so good after the 0-16 reports.
No, it's not. Now, it might be something that could change. I think it's a great point. He's doing it against that defense, but it's a bad sign that offensive line is struggling so much too.
Right.
So, can't really give him the complete pass there. Got a couple of good questions. We're going to hit those up in a second. But first, we got our first commercial note here from one of our good sponsors, from Dynasty Owner. Do you love fantasy sports? Are you ready for a new challenge this year? Dynasty Owner is the new way to play fantasy football with real NFL salaries, adding the strategy of running an actual franchise. Dynasty Owner provides a unique and challenging experience that will test your skills as an owner and general manager. You will have complete control over your team's future. You can build through the draft, make trades, sign free agents, and manage your team's salary cap. Can you create a dynasty of champions? Sign up now at dynastyowner.com and use promo code ROTO5. That's ROT as in Tom, 05 to receive $5 off any new team. Hey, I'm Jeff Erickson here. My guest is Luke Hoover from RotoWire. Luke and I just completed a Superflex auction league with 4 flex spots. First of all, league format. I love the format with more starting spots. I'm always a big fan of digging deeper. It's interesting. More starting spots, fewer reserve spots. So you still have that tension on the waiver wire, so you have to make some tough calls. But you're also having to have a little bit of depth. It's not just totally stars and scrubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, although I was, after the draft, lamenting a little bit to our commissioner that he didn't add at least 1 or 2 bench spots, because I tend to go into these auctions trying to create a lot of balance and depth and not have holes in the roster. Mm-hmm. I think I ended up succeeding after a little bit of a bumpy start, but my end game was to add Pickens, who, again, I'm going to be really beating the drum for him coming up over the next few weeks. And I filled my roster. I think I was the first actually to fill my roster, and just kept finding values on players that are proven, that are, really good talents. I think have big roles on their teams. And I ended up not getting to stash them in the end.
Well, and that's the thing. You make that decision, stars
right.
and scrubs versus a balanced roster. And let's pull up your roster right now, and you can see that Luke, Luke didn't spend a lot on any one given player. Let's pulling up his roster right now. It's the Polkai Panthers. And the most he spent on any one given player was Saquon Barkley at $31. And that in itself in a $200 budget realm, that's a bit of a discount compared to some of the other top running backs. I know you're simpatico with my former broadcast partner and good friend Chris Liss in calling for a bounce back season from Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, I get all the cause for concern, but he's 100% healthy as it seems right now. I don't think he's an injury-plagued player where he's suddenly, going to. It wasn't soft tissue injuries, and I guess that's the biggest thing for me. It was an ACL. It was a couple different ankle issues, and last year's, was that fluky sort of after the play, stepping on a foot and rolling his ankle badly. And he was starting to be back to that player. He'd had a big game against the Saints, I want to say 1 or 2 weeks prior to that. Caught a long touchdown in that game. The new head coach, new offensive system, I think an improved offense overall. The addition of Evan Neal in the first round to, I think, finally solidify a little bit of that O-line rebuild. To me, he's just too special of a talent. There's too big of an opportunity. Really, the only downside is, does he get hurt again? And I'm willing to take that gamble.
Are you concerned at all about maybe him not being the same player that he was thanks to all those injuries he had? That maybe there's some permanent change in his ability?
No, not really. And to me, he doesn't need to be the same player. He's going to have a huge workload if he's healthy. So you're talking about a guy who's getting well over 300 touches, I believe, if he gets 15, 16, 17 games. And, the workload by itself, I mean, Najee Harris wasn't super effective last year. And what was he, RB2 or 3 by the end of the year? And in terms of just that volume, leading the league in pass catching. Barkley had that 90 reception season as a rookie.
He did.
Reports at a camp where they're not just throwing him little dump offs and screens. They're running him on routes. They're running him downfield. He's running up the seam. He's got a lot of ability as a receiver that I think is still pretty untapped. Especially if they're starting to deploy him in different ways and be a little bit more strategic with how they do that. He's still got enough ability physically to make a guy miss in space. I'm not worried about that. I know his elusiveness ratings were low last year. I think that was first year off the ACL, and then the ankle injury was maybe week 5 or 6. So it's still early on the season. He was probably impacted by that the rest of the year.
RotoWire's Alan Seslowsky chimes in. Alan was also in the draft. He's also pro Barkley. Firmly getting drafted on the turn now, ADP 14-15. I'm not there yet.
Yeah,
I hear you.
I paid maybe a couple bucks more than I would have liked to for him, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with it. It was one of those decisions too at that point of the draft where I didn't have a running back. My targets going in, I'll tell you. And why I paid up, overpaid for Ayuk with my first bid. One, I was holding a screaming baby, so I was thrown off a little bit. I had to grab my son for about the first 30 to 40 or so bids, I think.
Okay.
So that messed me up a bit, and then I didn't realize I was getting into a bidding war with Dalton Del Don, who I think was added to the league somewhat last minute. So I thought he wasn't going to be in when I previously checked the rosters, and then he took Liss's spot maybe.
I think I think someone was joking about him not being able to make it. I don't know, because
anybody that's listened to Dalton knows he's trying to stack his Niners. He just narrowly outbid me for Lance pretty early on. I think he was one of the top 10 or so guys bid. So I had planned to grab Lance and Ayuk. I tend to go into these things with a list of maybe 3 to 5 guys that are kind of my must-have guys, and it's usually going to be because I think they're a particularly strong value. So I was hoping to get Ayuk more in that $15 range, and battled it out with Dalton, and ended up what I thought was overpaying a bit. I still believe really strongly in the talent, so I'm happy to have him, and I think it worked out as I adjusted and got some better values as the draft went on.
Right.
But where I took Barkley, my must-have running back who I did get later was A.J. Dillon, and other than that, I really thought Breece Hall and or Cam Akers would be great values, and I wanted to add one of those guys and have them be my top 2 backs, and I plan to go a little heavier receiver when I paid up a bit more for Barkley, and then ended up, not paying up for some of the receivers I wanted. Allen Robinson, who I got in both those drafts we did in Vegas, is a guy that, of course, obviously now he's picking up some camp hype and steam and climbing draft boards. I knew as he fell further and further and wasn't being put up for bid, I was gonna have a battle for him, and he went higher than I wanted to pay.
Yeah, I wagged my finger at you in Vegas when you took Robinson in our drafts because I love Allen Robinson.
Oh year. Yeah, I have him right inside my top 15. I just it's
top
a narrow
15 receivers.
Top 15 receivers, right.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. Well, I think the whole free world loves Allen Robinson with the Rams. We can all spit out.
Yeah, months ago I was getting so much cheaper.
Yeah.
It's like the second he signed, I was like, he's back.
Yeah, it's like people saying that they're big on Travis Etienne or Kyle Pitts this year. Yeah, we know everybody is.
Yeah, yep. Etienne was another guy I debated paying up for him, and I think he got put up for 25 immediately, and it was probably right around my max of what I would have paid for him.
For sure. Ayuk is he had that note about he's had rapport with Lance after struggling in the summer with him, even though they're working together or having a hard time getting on the same page. The phrase arm fatigue still scares me with Trey Lance. I'm not there for Trey Lance. I know you are. I ragged on you in Vegas for taking him before Russell Wilson. I still will, by the way. But
hey, now admittedly, that was a big oversight.
Was that a Vegas drunken mistake?
No, not at all.
That
was me going way too old school, not wanting to bring my laptop to the pool and working off a pen and pad that I had in my bag for the pool.
Gotcha.
And I just happened to not cross off, or I think I had already crossed off Russ's name. I don't remember the exact way I messed that one up, but I didn't realize Russ was still out there.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll give you a pass. I
had my heart set on Lance. I got him. So
yeah, hey, draft with your heart, have fun. It's a fantasy football league. If you believe in him, you're gonna go get your guys. I've never have a problem with that. Let's look at the rest of your team here. So you may have overspent on Ayuk at 21, but look at the other receivers you got at discounts. DK Metcalf for 17, Michael Thomas for 13. No risk there at all. No, there's plenty of risk.
My team is 100% risk reward right now.
Which always is for you, though. I mean, that's the way. It's a good way to play, though. Deontay Johnson
this is such a competitive league. I think you almost need to swing big.
Deontay Johnson for 13. Jerry Jeudy for 12.
Johnson was a player I had absolutely no intention of adding, in part because I planned to finish the draft up with Pickens, and I think a few spots later Elijah Moore went up, and having not planned to grab Johnson and just liking the value too much, I was a little disappointed. I didn't go for Moore, and I was very close, and then I turned around and grabbed Jeudy. To me, Jeudy versus Elijah Moore is kind of a coin flip. I think the upside of Moore a bit better.
I can appreciate that.
But the Patrick injury helps me a bit there.
Well, you know what, Johnson, I had a max bid left of $11, and I wanted to fill my last remaining starting spot, my fourth flex spot. And you on the other hand, you kind of conserved your money. You had money all the way through the end game, all the way to your final player with Kareem Hunt at pick 143.
Right. Which is part of why I don't end up with those $1, $2 rookie guys that I really like.
Yeah, which is opposite of me. We'll get on my team here in a second, but the unfortunate news on Tim Patrick is good news for your Jerry Jeudy. I think a few extra targets might fall his way that might have otherwise, just because unless they bring in another receiver, because I think KJ Hamler is interesting. But everybody, he and Kendall Hinton move up a peg, but they don't think they're going to demand the same target share that Patrick did. So I think maybe more throws go to the backs, the tight ends, and to the top two receivers.
Yeah, I mean, you got one of those with one of my favorite values with Javonte, who is kind of right there with Breece Hall as a guy that I thought, I expected Javonte actually to go a fair amount more than he did. Just, he's one of those guys that can turn a league, depending on how that back.
But that's the beauty of this format.
Yeah.
I mean, the Superflex plus four other flex spots. I mean, you have to fill a lot of spots. And so you don't pay as much for, even the stars go a little cheaper than they normally would, but that second tier really gets priced down. Let's look at your running backs after Barkley. Yeah, you also have Rashad Penny, another one of my faves at 12. I don't think you got a discount necessarily, but at the same time, I think that's a good, fair price. A.J. Dillon, a lot of people loving A.J. Dillon, including Aaron Rodgers today, said some nice things about him. You paid 18 for him. Maybe not. I'd say that's probably full priced. And then, got like, as alluded to earlier, you paid $9 in the end game for Kareem Hunt. And he was clearly the best remaining player at the time when you finished up your roster.
I was pretty happy to land him. I mean, especially taking look, I believe in Barkley, but it still feels risky, obviously, after the past 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. And Penny, I'm expecting, I'll be looking for somebody on the waiver wire when he's getting injured in week 4. He's been perpetually injured, it feels like. But the reports from camp, again, early in the summer, it's still, beginning of August, first week of August, but, supposedly explosive. Saw something about him, Carroll saying he's at, same playing weight that he was to end last season roughly, which I think was a concern of his in the past about him. He's a bigger back and maybe not being really in the shape he needed to be. So that he's, in that maybe top condition in early August gets me excited.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you did there. I like the balance there. I mean, you have, this is a prototypical balanced roster that you came out with. You came out with 3 quarterbacks too. I like that in a Superflex league.
Actually, I've got 4 quarterbacks, which was not the plan, and another reason why I really was kicking myself about not going to war over Trey Lance or Jalen Hurts. Those were my top 2 targets at quarterback. I kind of hoped to top out around 24, 25. They went for 25. I should have spent the extra buck or two. I know Lance went before my Ayuk pick, but again, while I was holding the kicking, screaming baby and I wasn't paying as close attention as I needed to be. And then once I'd overpaid for him, I think Hurts was just after I added Rodgers, and I still didn't have that running back. I knew there was a good chance I wanted to pay up for either Barkley or I want to say, and I think it was also Chubb, who might have still been available at the time. And I wanted one of those guys as my anchor back. So I didn't go the extra dollar or a few dollars I might need to for a guy like Hurts. So I when these guys kept falling, I felt like it was worth adding them because, I can stream with Daniel Jones if he doesn't quite hit, if they decide to shift gears. They don't have another option really behind him, but, who knows what that Giants offense will look like in the end. I like the upside of Zach Wilson. I still think Baker's talented. I believe he's, a really strong enough passer to put up production with DJ Moore, with a deep threat and Robbie Anderson, who was not utilized well last year. I'm still hopeful with a guy like Terrace Marshall that he could develop. And the Notre Dame homer in me likes the athleticism of a young Tommy Tremble as a H-back / tight end.
I read a note the other day that Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold are relatively equal in this quarterback battle, and talked about that with Nick Whalen today on Sirius XM because I was surprised by that because as soon as they made the trade, I thought any sort of talk about a job battle between Mayfield and Darnold was just lip service, that it's really going to be Mayfield's job. And I still think it will be.
I think it's still lip service. I don't really buy into that. He's just a much better passer. He's a better thrower. And, I want to believe he processes more quickly than Darnold, reads the field a little bit better. Neither of them is particularly mobile, even though I think Darnold had 5 rushing touchdowns at the beginning of last year. But I think it's also going to be Baker's mentality going into this season to, prove a little bit, about the way things played out with Cleveland.
Well, you're going to have some trade capital, and I think you will end up trading one of those 4 QBs because you don't want to have to be making decisions. And
I think I'm going to have to, but at some point, though, if you look real closely at my team, I'm pretty much losing weeks 9 and 14. I really am fully unintentional, but I think I can't even field a full roster. I'm going to have about 2 or 3 guys that are not playing. And
that's what happens when you stack a couple players on the same team. That happens. Yeah. I mean, you got Jones and Saquon on the Giants. Right. You've got Rodgers and Dillon on the Packers. So I can see it there. You got 3 Packers because you got their defense too.
Right.
Yeah, I get that. I've been in that position before. I'll tell you what, overrated.
I'm
Injuries happen.
I might have to replace some of these guys whether I want to or not, and if that can luckily stay healthy, I'll take the L in week 9 and be at full strength whenever everyone else has guys on bye.
Don't take an L in the playoffs. I mean, 14's perilously close to the fantasy playoffs. That's the tricky week for you.
If I need a win to get in, then I'm in trouble. Then I maybe need to.
Then you'll make trades.
Yeah.
But that's fine. Otherwise, I think the bye week analysis is super overrated. I know Scott Pianowski was writing about that in his review of this draft, and pay more attention to the early part of the schedule than the late part of the schedule because things change so so quickly. Fastly. Nice. Yeah, this is my second great speaking moment of the podcast here.
I said the bye weeks influenced one decision I really would have loved. I thought one of the best values at quarterback was Justin Fields, who you landed.
Mm-hmm.
When I checked quickly right before he went up for bid, I had already had Rodgers, and I was thinking about trying to pair him, and I double checked. They have the same buy, and I was like, I don't want to deal with that headache in a super flex.
I agree with.
Then I really felt like I would have to go 4 quarterbacks, and if I thought I could, which I never expected to, I probably would have bumped Fields up a little bit. Because I think you got him for roughly the same price I got Daniel Jones.
Yeah, 14 to 13, I think, respectively. I really like to have 3 quarterbacks. At least in a super flex. I like even 4 is fine because some trade capital is nice and injuries happen, and especially when you got 2 cheapies like that, you're kind of gambling. One of them shows some upside, and then you can kind of
right. And I don't think I needed the 4 quarterbacks in the end because I got such good value at receiver. I could potentially have swung a week if I had to, where I went no quarterback or no super flex and just played 1 QB. We didn't touch on it real quick. The one it was not on my radar at all. I had no intention of adding this player, but getting DeAndre Hopkins, I think for $2 maybe it really helps me out in the long run. Of course, once he gets back from the bye weeks, and especially with news of Marquise Brown, might have some legal issues. He's dealing with a hamstring issue. Maybe he starts slow. Maybe he gets suspended in season. Who knows what happens there? But I still think Hopkins is going to be able to put up some numbers even in its 30s. So.
I hear you on that, but 4-man benches, 6 weeks is a long time to carry a guy.
The only reason I'm dropping is if I got injury because I don't really, I've got the depth. So
I don't think you can stash a suspended guy on IR. So
no, I wasn't sure when I took him. I was, hopeful, but no, I can't.
Yeah, that's a problem. Before we contrast your team with mine, another quick note, this one from Fantasy Football for Dummies. Ready to take your fantasy football skills to the next level? Daily fantasy football is the latest and greatest way to play fantasy football. You can enter tournaments for 1 week and even just 1 game. It's an awesome way to apply your fantasy skills to make some money. But do you know whether 50-50 contests or guaranteed prize pool tournaments are for you or the difference between fading and stacking? Worry not. The new edition of Fantasy Football for Dummies has you covered. Inside this book, you'll find not just basic information and strategies for standard fantasy football play, but a whole section devoted to the hottest new fantasy action on the market. Whether you want to play through DraftKings, FanDuel, or any number of other services, this book will help you get started with your bankroll and offer advice and insight into the different contest types, drafting strategies for all the major tournaments, as well as tactics to take your daily fantasy game to the next level. Whether you're looking for a little excitement or a chance at winning money, Daily Fantasy Football is the perfect game for you. And the second edition of Fantasy Football for Dummies is the book to help you win big. Big thanks to our friends at the Fantasy Football for Dummies. We appreciate them advertising with us. Jeff Erickson here with Luke Hoover. We are talking auction leagues, Superflex leagues, and specifically the league that we just did on Monday night, Flex Vegas, I believe we're calling it. It's a Superflex league. It's a $200 budget auction, half-point PPR, 4 flex spots, 2 receiver spots. So that's one thing that changes a little bit here. Luke, while you were on Screaming Baby Watch and hadn't taken a player in the first 31 picks, I had already filled my roster with 6 players. So we were completely different builds as far as this draft goes.
A little bit.
And trust me, I've been on Screaming Baby Watch before, but now my babies are 17 and 15. So holding them and them screaming would be a completely different proposition that no one wants to see or hear. So, yeah. It's so funny. For 9 players through the shoot, I'm like, okay, I'm calm. I'm being patient. Joe Burrow comes up and it's all over, and I'm spending like crazy after that, spending like a madman. I spent a good chunk of my budget, 70, 90, 114, 131, 140 of my budget in the first 28 players.
Definitely opposite approaches here.
Yeah. That said, in a veteran room like this, I don't mind that. I don't mind spending early because I think now I like some of the prices you got, but I also think that sometimes some early players coming out of the chute can be a bargain. I'll give you. I thought at the time I overpaid for Joe Burrow when I spent 31 on him because a couple other quarterbacks might have gone cheaper early on. Then I like Lamar Jackson later on went for 29, and I had some regrets. Murray went for 28, but then like Matthew Stafford went for 32. Kirk Cousins went for 26. We saw a lot of expensive mid-draft quarterbacks. It's just an illustration of how auctions are weird, and the relative value of players can change in the course of an auction.
100%. And that's why, I ended up with Daniel Jones as my second quarterback instead of, a more stable guy like Cousins or Carr, both of whom I was targeting, but I wasn't paying up into the mid 20s for them. I got Rodgers at 19. I was hoping to keep,
that's a part. Boy, that's a sick bargain now.
I was pretty pleased by the end of the draft with that. I was hoping to get one of those other two guys in that similar range, but also was looking for somebody who's a little bit more mobile. So I wasn't too disappointed with Jones. I believe I was the one who put up Chase for bid after you paid up for Burrow. I knew you were pairing the two.
Dastardly.
I just wanted to get some budget,
to be fair,
chopped down from you because we tend to like really similar players. I figured we might be going toe for toe for Robinson later on in the draft.
And I was in on the bidding on Robinson without a doubt. And yeah, I think he went late, like you said, he went later in the draft. So, I just couldn't afford him. I went pick 77. He still went for 25. So, at least, Ted Bell, superfan Ted Bell didn't get like an utter bargain with him, but he got a pretty good price. $14 cheaper than Chase. I guess it is a bit of a bargain, but $1 more than my AJ Brown, which tell you what, I love me some AJ Brown too.
Yeah, he was one of your early pickups. I really like. I mean, I love Chase and Burrow, the players. You clearly look at my roster. I'm not paying up for guys really. I was going for a different build. I did like Brown. I mean, even personally though, I wouldn't. I had like a select handful of receivers I'd pay in that 25 to 30 range for. I don't know if the volume's there for him. He's one of those guys. He's just so physical. Feels like he's going to be banged up 1 or 2 weeks out of the year, and you can deal with that, in a league with depth like this. But I mean, for all the money you spent early, though, I loved some of the values you got in the middle. That run of Javonte Fields and Hunter Renfrow, who I really was tempted to go a buck or two higher on. And then your tight ends, $1 each. I love Freiermuth this year. I'm in a lot despite the quarterback issues, I'm in on a lot of the Steelers' skill talent. I think Claypool went pretty late and for cheap, but I liked him. So you got great values kind of in the end game.
Thank you. I think that I played the tight end chicken game for sure. In fact, I believe you were the guy that Cole Kmet was a guy that I would have been happy with. I was at $1 a player at that point in time, but
I knew I wasn't paying for a tight end. Kmet was on that short list of must-have guys. He was pretty much the only tight end I was aiming for. Freiermuth probably would have been the number 2 though behind him.
Yeah, I wanted Freiermuth, but I think I threw out Kmet first because Freiermuth got banged up a little bit with the hamstring injury. And so that's why I backed him up with Hunter Henry. Usually I don't draft 2 tight ends, but in the Vegas, go ahead.
Sorry, to me, the Freiermuth and Kmet, their paths to points are almost the opposite to me. Freiermuth, I think, is that red zone weapon, going to put up some touchdowns. And he had a fair amount of receptions last year, but I think the addition of Pickens with Deontay, with Claypool, and a quarterback with a functioning arm, that's a lot of targets to split up with those receivers, and Najee coming out of the backfield to eat up a lot of targets. So I don't know that Freiermuth gets volume, but I think he gets high value targets.
That's
where
right.
with Kmet, I don't see how he doesn't walk into 120 plus targets just with him and Mooney as the top passing options in an offense where they're going to be behind. They're going to be behind a lot. They're going to be throwing the football. So I like that the garbage points that Kmet can pile up.
How dare you diminish the work that Velus Jones and N'Keal Harry are going to do with the Bears there? Come on.
It's that number 2 receiver is Byron Pringle.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Ex-Chief K-Stater.
I mean, I like Velus Jones's athleticism. Really good, shifty guy after the catch. But
it's not bad for a 45-year-old drafted out of college, right? No, we kid. He's only 25, but still, it's crazy to think about that. I just, the Bears are such weird. I hope it works out. Obviously, I've got Justin Fields. You alluded to that. I want Kmet to work out really well for him, and I wanted Kmet over Freiermuth. I wanted Kmet. Happy with Freiermuth. I actually nominated Irv Smith. Would have been thinking that a Burden nomination, I'd get him for $1. Instead, he went for $2, and I got a little lucky there. Dalton bid the 2 on him, and then he still might be fine, but he banged up his thumb, had surgery yesterday. They say he's going to be ready for week 1, but this is critical time with the new offense after he missed all of last season.
Absolutely. And I mean, it sounds like they want to target the running backs a little bit more even. So, Cook's going to eat into his volume. They're going to be in more 3 receiver sets. I really like KJ Osborne, who I want to say was one of the very last guys added in this format. And, he flashed some serious ability last year. Good after the catch, quality deep threat with as much attention as Jefferson draws, as good as Thielen is, in one-on-one and in the red zone. Osborne's a little bit of that forgotten guy, but I don't know that there's going to be a lot left over for, I like him, the son of a Notre Dame tight end. And even though I went to Bama where they beat up on Notre Dame, but he's got so much athletic ability. We'll see if they can tap into his upside. I'm looking, I didn't realize, but I know your strategy is to usually go 3 quarterbacks, but you don't seem to have a third.
No, I couldn't. I couldn't pull it off. Well, and I wanted to make sure I filled all 4 flex spots first before getting spending on the backup. And quarterbacks got priced up. All the quarterbacks. There were no $1 quarterbacks this year. If you notice, I'm trying to go through there, make sure that
you could have taken a gamble. I don't think there are some potential starters that got
like even Trubisky went for $5. Jacoby Brissett went for $2.
Still be out there.
What's that? Say that again.
I don't believe Pickett was drafted.
No, he wasn't.
Trubisky continues to struggle. They may want to get him out there.
Mason Rudolph wasn't drafted. That might be your answer, but but there's not a single $1 quarterback rostered.
Yeah. That's tough, and I don't blame you for wanting. I mean, you got such a good value, like I said, with Hunter Renfrow, because I still think he's an 80, 90 plus catch guy. There's just a narrow target tree for them.
Oh, Geno was $1. I was wrong. Dave Lansdowne points that out.
Yeah, Thornberry got his Seahawk quarterback.
He might have got aged Seahawk quarterback. That's right. He got that early.
There are a lot of Homer draft picks in here. Look closely.
Thorne went uber stars and scrubs. And that's why I didn't notice it, because it was way early. I guess it wasn't way early. It's pick 166. It was the 9th player taken on his roster, though. Right. Drew Lock is still available. Mason Rudolph is still available.
You got options.
A number of the rookies. A lot of the rookies are out there.
Right.
And Darnold too.
I mean, sooner or later, what are the Falcons going to do? Desmond Ritter's probably getting under center at some point.
Agreed. Malik Willis might get under center at some point.
I wouldn't be totally surprised if Willis is, if the Titans get off to a really slow start, or they get eliminated, or Tannehill's running gets him injured, something like that. So that was a surprise, but I can't really knock any pick that you made other than that last one. I'm not a believer in Jameson Williams this year.
Well, because he's coming back from the injury, I get it.
A little bit of that, but also, I mean, Goff's deep ball is, a little concerning. I just don't like the fit there in that offense.
Fair point, but I'll tell you what, we have 3 IR spots.
You can hang on to him. You're right. You can go and grab my one of my other favorite rookies who didn't get picked up here.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to speak his name into existence. We've already had Tim
Oh,
Patrick get hurt.
Aaron Rodgers is speaking his name into existence. I don't know.
Yes, I know Romeo
I
Dobbs.
think everybody will be on him pretty soon.
Yeah, I actually saw some moves already in this league. I think Patrick had to be
I
replaced.
already did grab a couple guys for IR.
Did you? Who did you grab?
Logan Thomas. Let me take a look. I claimed, and I want to say, well, I think I filled them all. You got to take advantage of those spots. David Bell and Kyron Williams.
Okay. Who's also, because both those guys, you picked them up and then put them on IR. I got it, and gotcha. I see how that went. Kyron Williams on the pup list still. But the Rams, I mean, they're talking about splitting carries between Akers and Henderson, so we'll see. I have 0 Akers, by the way, this year. Got a couple of questions, but before we hit those up, quick note from our sponsors on the Blue Wire Network. All right. Good question here from Kevin. Asking about budgeting, and I think this is interesting. Kevin Carey asked, what percentage would you cap your QB budget at? And I did a rough budget going into my draft, and not everybody does this, but what I did is I allocated $45 for my 2 quarterback spots. I did $60 a piece for my 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers, and then split the rest mostly among the flex spots. But those are just rough. I don't really rigidly adhere to those. It turned out that I spent 45 on the 2 quarterbacks, and it did turn out that I spent roughly $60 on the 2 receivers, 63, but spent far less on my 2 running backs, so I could apply more to my flex guys instead. I think the whole thing here, though, is I have a running list. If I spend too much in one of those, then I know I have to borrow from somewhere else. If I leave aside a little bit of a budget on one of those positions, I can apply it elsewhere, the other empty spots. I like knowing where I'm at throughout the auction in terms of my budget. That's kind of the way I do it. I don't really say I will not spend more than 45 on my 2 quarterbacks. If I find that Aaron Rodgers is going too cheaply, or Tom Brady, who went for 21, I want to have that ability to buy on those. Now, I had already spent on Burrow, so I didn't really do that. But maybe I should have gone 22 on Brady and then found another way. But then that wouldn't allow me to get the $23 Javonte Williams later. And I did a fist pump on the Javonte Williams buy. So, trade-offs for everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of went in with the same exact approach, and in part, a nod to you. I went and looked up your article from the last time we ran this league.
Yeah.
I had read it at the time, which was I believe 2020, and I thought that was a good approach. I budgeted a little more for QB, about 50 to 55, and I'll give myself a range. So if I do decide to spend up, I know I got to knock that, running back or receiver position down about $5. I typically will allot the least for running back. It worked really well for me in 2020. I paid up at quarterback and receiver, and was able to hit on guys like Kareem Hunt and Antonio Gibson. And I just ended up, like I said, kept getting value after value this year. I didn't have to, spend up or hit my budget on certain positions or get the opportunity for those values, which there's another rookie in there I really liked that reminds me of Kareem Hunt that went real cheap that I wanted. But I'll try to trade for, use a quarterback to pry Dameon Pierce off. I think it's maybe Pete's roster, but now that he won't have Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, but he's still got Kyler and Lamar. So
still want that bye week QB.
Yeah, well, we'll see about that. We'll see how that works out. Follow-up question from Kevin. Who's the worst QB1 and QB2 you'd be okay leaving an auction with? Good question. That's again how you want to do team structure. I've often find myself give me 3 guys in the middle sometimes in those. One approach is to go I want Cousins, Carr, and someone else in that range. That wouldn't have worked in this draft, in this auction. It would have been too expensive. I'm glad I didn't go that route. I'm glad I have a number 1 QB in Burrow, and get Fields as my number 2. But I'll tell you what, I could go. I just as soon, I think going like Josh Allen and Davis Mills is actually okay in this sort of format. When every quarterback gets drafted, a guy like Davis Mills still has some value. You don't get negative. You don't get too much punishment for interceptions, and definitely not. It's not like the Scott Fishbowl where you get negative points for incompletions. I'm willing to go that route. I tend to prefer to have two more solid second quarterback, but sometimes that's just not available. Matt Ryan is often a floor for me as far as QB2 goes.
Yeah, for me, I mean, my approach in previous drafts was to try to pay up for both quarterbacks. I had Kyler and Aaron Rodgers in 2020, which worked out great. Rodgers was kind of my floor QB1, so I was really lucky to get him at the price I did and when I did.
He was cheaper that year.
Right. Well, yeah, he was cheaper in 2020, but I still got him at a nice price this year. He doesn't have the ceiling to me of some of these mobile QBs like Lance and Hurts, who were my top targets. And actually Wilson was even, ahead of Rodgers as far as targets for me. But I think I was looking to go more in like that 25, 28 range, and he ended up getting into the 30s. For me, that QB2 target's almost always going to be, if I'm not going to go pay up for both, which I was trying to do and pair Rodgers with a Lance or Hurts, is going to be, running quarterback. If they didn't have the same buy, it would have been Fields, and I would have outbid you for him. But
thank you for not.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
If I didn't already have Rodgers, I might have made that mistake and been starting with Fields. But like I said, I like Jones's mobility and upside there as a potential runner, especially with what Daboll did, on design runs for Josh Allen, even though Jones doesn't have the body to be banging into linebackers the way Allen does. But even Zach Wilson has some mobility.
Sure,
where he can scramble. I mean, he had like that 50-yard touchdown run late last year. I want to say he had double-digit touchdown runs his last year at BYU. I'm always going to target someone with some rushing upside.
And I'll say this, Wilson's had a terrible camp so far, at least on the field. Maybe off the field, he's doing
today was good. Today was supposedly pretty strong.
Yeah, and the thing is, the Jets invested. They improved their offensive line. They got Garrett Wilson. They got Breece Hall. I mean, they really went out of their way to make sure that he's got a better supporting cast this year. It is year two. You expect to, he missed a lot of time with an injury last year. All the things, he looked really out of place last year, without a doubt. He had a couple of decent games, but for the most part, he looked behind the curve. But there's usually often a huge change. And I'll tell you what, every year there's one bottom 10 quarterback draft-wise that makes the leap and is all of a sudden is a really good fantasy player. Whether it's Jalen Hurts or whether it's, it could be this Wilson could be it. I don't want to say go find this year's Jalen Hurts, but go find, really go find that. And you've got two shots at that with Mayfield and Wilson, and that can often work, especially in a Superflex league.
Yeah. You referred to him before, Allen and Mills, I think pairing. He was one of those guys as a third or fourth QB I really liked. I can't even tell you right now why I didn't, go the extra buck on him, because I think he did go before I had Wilson. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to check that right now. He went before I got Wilson, and I think Mayfield too. So I like his upside. I think maybe a little bit of a better processor than Wilson, and he plays within structure a little bit better. But like you say, I really love the investments they made. I'm a huge believer in Elijah Moore, and I don't think Garrett Wilson's going to be that far off from him. He's a very similarly talented player. And they still got some depth with Corey Davis. Maybe Denzel Mims can make a splash player too. There's reports out of camp that he is. Maybe he's a trade target also. And they added tight ends. CJ Uzama and Tyler Conklin are both really nice pass catchers.
Yep, indeed. And Kevin, we just answered your question in case you were stepped away. So, but hopefully you caught it. I'd appreciate that. Any other parting thoughts? Auctions, Superflex leagues, or elsewise?
No, not too many other parting thoughts, but I'll tell you real quick. I don't hear a lot about it. The one parting I thought I would tell anybody that's, we're still in early August. If you're not in one right now, try to do a guillotine league.
Yes.
Since I'm, not really writing as much as I used to in my more heyday with putting out, churning out articles for RotoWire. I really have gotten into different formats, and guillotine leagues and vampire leagues are two that I, try to play as much of and run a lot of. So, as much I love, and in most cases, they're going to be still Superflex. I think Superflex is really the way to go. There's just too many talented quarterbacks in the league. But I would love to do more auctions. That was a lot of fun, this draft that we just had. I'm really glad Ted threw it together. It was kind of funny timing because I had been talking to Thornberry when we were in Vegas about trying to put it together, since I was first in points in 2020 in the regular season, and he kicked my butt in the semis and went on and won it. We were both itching to try to compete again. And then, for us, it's, a lot of writers, it kind of feels like a best of the best thing. But those formats, deeper league, auction drafts, those are some of the most fun.
Yeah, and I'll advocate for 14-team leagues too. The deeper the league, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I know the NFFC did away with their 14-team draft in terms of like their main event, the live events in Vegas, which I loved it. I like that format, but you know what? That's okay. Not everybody does. But that's okay.
I can agree with that. I'll add one thing to it too, and why I bugged Ted about the short bench spots. I know it makes for tough decisions in season, but I like the bigger benches and bigger rosters generally, whether that's by increasing the number of teams or just increasing the number of starters or bench spots. My biggest thing is trying to evaluate deeper talent, and looking for those breakout youngsters, rookies, or guys that haven't maybe hit yet. Another name that I love that you won't hear much of in the summer, but I think he's going to be the clear number 2 and step up for Baltimore, is James Prochet. I loved him coming out of SMU. Want him to be a Packer. I want to be in a league where I can own James Prochet and justify doing it. Because
no, I hear you. I hear you.
And my guillotine leagues are 16, start at 16 teams, 20-person roster. So we're drafting a ton of spots, no kicker, 1 defense. You got 19 skill guys, times 16. Well, so
I am doing the 20-man roster format tomorrow with the NFFC RotoWire Online Championship, the first beat Jeff Erickson league. So we'll be live streaming that one off of Greg and Tom's platform over at the NFFC. I'm going to be doing a radio hit with them tonight. Really excited about that. I love the 20-man roster too. I think that's fun. For that reason you cite. And that's why I like Superflex too. When you have a lead on a quarterback that doesn't get drafted or started in a Superflex league, those guys matter as well as they should. I mean, let's face it.
In 2018, if you took Patrick Mahomes as your second QB late, you won your league, probably.
Exactly. Lamar Jackson the year after that too. Yeah. Absolutely.
Good luck getting your Bengals tomorrow. It's 20 teams. You're going to have some competition.
All right. Thanks. Well, we'll see if I go that route. I have the number 2 pick. I'll tell you what, I hate the number 2 pick.
It won't be Jamar Chase, I guess, huh?
I don't think so. Not if I'd be a charlatan if I didn't follow my rankings and take, I have both Kupp and Jefferson over Chase. So
agreed. Yeah.
I have to follow my rankings there, at least for that pick. Otherwise, what am I doing? So we'll see. But unless I change my rankings tonight, but I am going to be doing an update, but that part's not going to change. All right, Luke, awesome stuff. Thank you for joining me today. Great seeing you in Vegas. And if you put together a RotoWire staff guillotine league, let me know.
I'll send out some notes. It would be fun to do a staff one. I do have 1 spot left in my current 16-teamer. If you want that, it's yours. Jeff Coventry is going to be in it.
Jim Coventry, awesome.
Jim Coventry.
Yeah, and you can tweet at Luke Hoover at Hoover_L_A. And follow. You should follow him anyhow. Thanks, Luke, again. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening, for the comments. We really do appreciate it. Take care. Good luck in your drafts. Have a good day.